Angel and the Badman is a 1947 Western film. This was written and directed by James Edward Grant, and we have John Wayne as Quirt Evans and Gail Russell as Penelope Worth. And I'm kind of on the fence with how I feel about this one. Absolutely, when I started watching it, I didn't think it was very good. It was very slow to kind of get anywhere and for me to become invested in it in any way. But once, I'd say after maybe the first half an hour, we got to know Quirt as a person and learn more about him and watch Penelope look after him, and then we have their kind of, I'll use the word relationship, but obviously to begin with, they don't know each other, and kind of watch that develop and watch the character development of Quirt. I really enjoyed it. Not so much so that I would say I loved it, but it definitely picked things up after the first kind of half an hour, give or take. The film itself is an hour and 40 minutes. And Quirt Evans is a pretty bad person. He is not a nice guy, but he is always likable. That is something that I did find about him. I did think the character of him was very fascinating. Even though maybe the narrative itself wasn't that interesting for the first half hour, I did want to know who he was, where he came from, what his story was, and that's definitely something that kind of kept me going. And something happens to him and this Quaker girl called Penelope, Gail Russell of course, nurses him back to health. And as she nurses him, they bond, they develop this, maybe friendship if you like, and things seem to be going well. But they are very different people, or at least they're from very different walks of life. And as Quirt gets better and healthier, he's obviously feeling the pull of his own life, where things are dark and dangerous and not very innocent. But he's also becoming deeply attracted to Penelope. And Penelope is innocent and sweet and full of goodness. And she says this one line. There's this one little. It's not so much a line, more of a conversation they have, but she says something along the lines of, "Only you can hurt yourself." I can't remember if she's quoting the Bible or something. I feel like I should know that, and I feel terrible for not knowing that. But I'm not very good with specific passages. But there's this interesting conversation Quirt and Penelope have about how people can physically hurt you, but only you can let yourself be hurt internally. Suggesting, therefore, that we have the power to overcome feelings of anger or jealousy or hurt, and that only if we allow ourselves to feel those things will we feel them. And I thought that was pretty interesting, and it did actually provoke some thought, and the reason I'm mentioning this is because that's kind of the turning point in the film for me. My ears kind of pricked up at that point, and I thought, okay, the conversation's getting interesting, they're discussing some interesting topics, and then I became more invested in the characters and, what their journeys were. And it's basically, in a nutshell, Quirt's a bad guy, Penelope's a good guy, the bad guy falls for the good guy. Will he be able to give up his life to be with her, or will he forever feel the calling of his bad ways? Obviously, I'm not going to say what happens, but once it got going, I liked it. I found that I was invested in it. It's not as action-packed or as high intensity as some westerns. For me, that's not so much of a problem, because I like westerns for the atmosphere, and that isn't just kind of the action-packed element, but I know that some people prefer their westerns to be, constant shoot-'em-ups and horses galloping everywhere. It's not quite as intense as that. It's a lot more gentle, as we focus more on the relationships rather than the action. I did enjoy it. I would say that I liked Angel and the Badman. I would recommend it if you're a fan of westerns, or if you're a fan of romance films. But if you're on the fence with either of those, I'd say watch it at some point, but maybe don't prioritize it. It's definitely not a brilliant film for me, but I did, for the most part, enjoy Angel and the Badman.